An interview taken with me once upon a time when I was a nun.
As a spiritual seeker, I'm interested in Buddhism, and what really sparked my interest when I met you, you were a nun for a certain period of your life. And my question is, how did your path start, and what led you to the decision of becoming a nun?
Well, actually, the thing of being a nun was much bigger than the way how I became a nun. It is even shameful to say how I made this decision to become a nun. But no matter what was the reason, important is that I met this opportunity in my life, which I really appreciate. And now it's been more than 1 year that I disrobed and I'm again a layperson, while I was a nun only for 2 months. But that experience really made a big change on my path. And then, answering the question, what made me decide to try this, to ordain temporary? It was just that I was spending another cold season in Asian countries, and I had pretty much of time available for myself. I was writing my book based on my travel experience and also some understanding of life. When I found really this time available, and I was in the Buddhist community with Tabarwa, and I felt staying like a yogi another week and then another week that I would be still having would be not very appropriate. I've been with Tabarwa for many years already, and I know nuns and monks there, and I like to meditate with them, and I like the teaching of the main monk of Sayadaw Tamasara. And when I was staying there in Kuala Lumpur, there are 5 nuns who reside together, and they run the household and they meditate a lot, and they accept yogis to come to help them and also to learn from them. So after a week of staying like that, I felt really it's inappropriate. I don't know whether it is inappropriate from the sense of discomfort of taking space, taking their time, I don't know, taking food there for free also. Or maybe there was some internal feeling of myself that after years of being into meditation, after multiple times having heard from Sayadaw that I should ordain and try, at least try temporarily to be a nun, and I was always rejecting. This time, when he was not there, he was not around, somehow I felt that why am I just a yogi? Why do I take so little when I can take so much more? So once again, it was the availability of time, and it was the place that I was taken there in Tabarwa premises, in Tabarwa Center in Kuala Lumpur. And I felt it wouldn't be appropriate to continue staying as yogi. And I decided, why not trying to become a nun? Moreover, behind this idea, there was my husband who was staying back in Switzerland, doing his work. And I was taking this time away in Asia because he also wanted to have some of his private time. He wanted to have some chance for his own transformations, or maybe to understand something more about himself, his life. And he also told me, well, you would be there in Asia, you can even become a nun. Usually this is an issue that nobody of your relatives would support you, and they would be afraid that you take that path. But my husband told that to me so easily. I don't know if it was jokingly or not, but this way or another, the situation brought it all together, all those conditions, that, I made a decision to become a nun. Moreover, I knew that soon there would be a retreat in Vietnam where Sayadaw would be coming from Burma. and I wanted to come there and surprise him as a nun. But when I talked to the main nun there in Tabarwa Center, Kuala Lumpur, she proposed that it would be much more beneficial for me to ordain under Sayadaw himself, to do it there in Vietnam when I meet him. For me, it was a bit like a question of a game. I was feeling a bit of fun, trying something new, because in my life I already can say quite surely that experience is very important. Whatever is happening there, whether it is involving any difficulty, challenge, I would go for it if it brings experience. So becoming a nun, shaving your hair, letting aside your habitual actions, habitual way of life, your clothes after all, being obliged to wear one and the same brown robe in the heat of the summer, and you have 3 or 4 layers of that robe. This is quite challenging, and I understand that it's not only the time, the place, and the words of my husband and my feeling of some inappropriateness of stay there as a yogi that made me become a nun, but of course this is already the setting of my mind, the set of my mind that I had developed before, that would be ready to take that kind of game. Even if we say that it was kind of a game for me in the beginning, that I said, well, okay, why not try and why not go and surprise Sayadaw? I was playing with the monk who I believe is has achieved the heights of Dhamma, the heights of understanding, knowing the truth. Inside myself, I was just having this feeling of fun to go and surprise him. But then one idea supported the other, and also this curiosity, there was curiosity for the experience. And when I already discussed this idea with one of my friends who knows me and who knows Tabarwa too, and who knows about my inclination to understanding of Dhamma meditation, when I voiced my idea, the probability of it, she sent me a message back and she already took it seriously. She said, if you become a nun, well, I can see you as a nun. This is very suitable for you. I wouldn't be surprised that you go for it. And then it gave the force. So one after another. And yeah, I came to Vietnam to take part in that retreat with all monks and nuns with that intention to become a nun, and with some trembling heart, I can say. I came to announce it first to some Sayale, some nuns that I know, and they told me how to come, approach, and say this to Sayadaw and ask him to accept me as a nun. This is partially formal procedure, partially just a talk, just to inform him. And yeah, here it happened.
For me, it would be interesting to know, my feeling of being a monk or being a nun. There's just certain things that appear in my head with all of the renunciation on the meditation. And can you talk about the experiences that made and the difference? What was it for you personally? How did it feel that you're now not a lay person anymore? How did your lifestyle change? And how did this feeling of being a nun maybe change over time?
Wow, listening to your question, I have to say I'm living the whole world of feelings now. There was shivering on my skin, and because a year passed and actually I never discussed it with anyone. Well, very little with some other girl who also ordained as a nun. And then yeah, it brings back some realizations now, because that was really very important experience for me, and as you understand right, it made a difference. And although in the beginning, in the first days, I came to Sayadaw once and I told him, well, I was holding my robe like this, just on my shoulder, having it with my fingers, shaking it a bit and saying, you say this makes a change? No, this doesn't make a change. I was still playing my game. Mind is a tricky thing. Although it was leading me in the right way, I was not yet letting go everything. I was still trying to control the situation maybe, and trying to live my life of nunhood with my way of seeing things. That, okay, so let's see what it is. You told me so many times I should ordain, so what about it? So I was just shaking a bit my robe like this and saying, so you said this will make a change? Robe doesn't make a change, no. As much as I was near to you before, I was interested in Dhamma, I was learning, I was asking questions. This is the same that I'm doing now. The only difference is that I can eat with other nuns and not separately. I can go with you to some places where sometimes I couldn't go as a yogi, but no much difference for my own experience. And Sayadaw told me, you don't feel the difference because you don't take it seriously, because you take it as temporary. Live every moment. Be in the present moment. Be a nun. You are a nun. Just be a nun. Don't think of it as something temporary, and you will feel the difference. And I can't say that those words struck me and I went out of the room and the world turned and I became a nun. No. I don't know how it happened, but it exactly happened in this very way, that soon, I can't count the time, but maybe during another week, I felt a big difference already. I learned to be a nun. I can't say that before I had a habit of playing games on my smartphone and now I didn't do this anymore, and that I like to chat to my friends about nothing and now suddenly I didn't do it anymore, so I renounced things. No, my life had always been more or less in that path, that I don't seek to entertain myself a lot in this life. I'm not interested. This is not something that fulfills me. And I do prefer always to make mindful choices for something which will be, maybe if not truly leading me to enlightenment, really teaching me something, but at least something that will be effective for daily life. So there wasn't a big change in renouncing anything, unless that I really started approaching myself more to the teaching of Sayadaw. One of his teachings that he repeats a lot, that we should do without limit. And also, as he says about monks and nuns, that monks and nuns, they renounce their life. They abandon their personality, not only their belongings, not only their likes and dislikes, they abandon their life for the sake of all. They study Dhamma in order to be able to understand themselves, to be able to bring to others, to serve others. And then Dhamma, mindfulness, meditation, is not only when we really study, but we are habitual to this concept of studying with a book or studying from listening to a lecture and sitting meditating on the cushion in the corner. Mindfulness should be there in every action, and Sayadaw, he encourages us to be there for others and to go and to do good deeds. And when you perform some action, you should do it mindfully with detachment. So all these concepts suddenly started becoming not only theory for me, but there was some true application from me. That robe that I was shaking in front of Sayadaw and was saying this changes nothing, it started changing exactly because I was having that robe on me. It was kind of a reminder, like some alarm, I don't know, that would always tell me, you're a nun. People take you as a nun. Because what makes the difference that in Asian communities, people really respect monks and nuns. They respect monastic life and they look at you with that respect. They give you way, they give you the priority, and you feel that. When people were giving me that respect of a nun, I started feeling myself a nun. In response, I started feeling that I should be giving for others, doing for others. So those words of Sayadaw started becoming for me reality of my daily life. I can say practice, but it stopped being even practice, it became life. There is difference, we always say, between theory and practice, but then there became to be a difference between practice and life. Because practice still stays to be an exercise, while life becomes something actual, real. So that was the time when I was still there in Vietnam, in the community, and I was really rotating in that happening. The happening was soaking me inside, like vacuuming me, I would say. And there was completely different period when I came back to Malaysia. Sayadaw continued with his team somewhere else, and I came back to Malaysia, to Tabarwa KL, from where initially I got this idea to become a nun. And there were still those, I don't remember exactly 4 or 5 nuns, it doesn't make big difference, but I became a part of them. I was their guest before, and now I was with them. And this was already the experience supported by what I had lived in Vietnam, where I took my first steps to be a nun, where I experienced my doubts, where I was still playing a game about which I already forgot by the moment of coming back to Kuala Lumpur. There were challenges as always, not enough sleeping, not... well, when you are with Sayadaw, you happen to be in all different situations. And then I came to Kuala Lumpur, and there the nuns live in an apartment, and they have their quite settled way of nunhood and life. And there I started having more insights, I would say, due to the power of meditation that we were practicing there, and due to what I had accumulated before in my experience of nun, due to allowing myself to be a nun, I started really kind of having some insights.
Can you talk more about these insights? You're speaking about mindfulness and doing good deeds. What is this actually doing with you? How is this changing your reality or your perception of reality?
Well, now, if we talk about now, right? I came to be at some stable level of being in touch with Dhamma, let's say. Before, I could take it as something temporary, some knowledge that sometimes I practice, sometimes I go for a retreat to take a course of Vipassana meditation, and I knew that Dhamma is not, it has no place, it has no time. Dhamma is about all, but it was for someone, for those Buddhists, for those maybe monastic people. While now I don't feel the difference between even a lay person and monastic people. Of course, there is a difference in the level of responsibility once again, and in the amount of living Dhamma, consciously, mindfully, but I can't say anymore that being a lay person, I'm not under the law of Dhamma. Whether we know it or not, Dhamma is the only happening, true for everyone, for everything. I experience it daily. I know very confidently, and I see in everything happening Dhamma. And this all came to me thanks to the ability to understand the teaching of Dhamma from the words of Sayadaw, from the recordings that I heard, from some books that I was reading during my stay back in Tabarwa in Kuala Lumpur, from the meditations that I was practicing there, sitting meditations with the other nuns. They all speak Burmese. They hardly ever talked to me English, not so much. So I was actually left all to myself. But the atmosphere that they were providing by their constant meditation, when I'm there, I felt also like meditating. And moreover, they keep the small players always on with the voice of Sayadaw teaching or some other masters maybe also. And day and night, you hear the teaching. They gave me also 8 hours recordings of Sayadaw teachings, which I also kept next to my pillow. And through the night, I was hearing the voice of Sayadaw in Burmese somewhere in the room for other nuns. And next to my ear, there was this small player with teachings of Sayadaw that whatever moment I'm awake, I could immediately listen to Dhamma teaching. So all that started really working for me, giving me some results of what actually we should seek for. When we are on the path, we should be seeking for this kind of way to enlightenment. Before, I had never had this interest to be enlightened. For me, it was more to learn to handle the life, and this very strong, sincere interest in understanding. So before I was learning Dhamma more for understanding what is happening really. While then I really understood more about this life, about suffering, the concept of that our life is never something to trust, to build upon. Yeah, I like this expression, to build upon something. Everything is very unstable. Everything is impermanent. How can we rely on something and take it as the basis and build upon this some plans or some understanding or some connections, whatever? So I started really feeling that life, not like fragile, but not real. And then this is what gave me this stability now that I see Dhamma in everything. I know that life is not something to cling to. And with that, I appreciate Dhamma much more. I appreciate learning not out of my game, not out of my curiosity, but I appreciate it out of the truth of being over everything. And since I have that connection to Dhamma, I appreciate this a lot, and I understand that something is given to me, something very precious. So I can't be just playful with that. What I have now, just to summarize the answer to your question, what it gave me is that the stability of mind, of understanding what is really necessary and what is just everything else.
In my imagination, enlightenment is about just being happy all the time. What you are referring to here with Dhamma and truthfulness now sounds a little different for me. Can you distinguish between enlightenment as a way of happiness and enlightenment as the way of truthfulness, or is that actually one and the same?
The answer to this question, as well as the continuation of the interview, you're welcome to hear in my next podcast. Meanwhile, I welcome your questions so that this subject can be continued. Thanks for your interest. You can also find me on my website www.katerinauniversal.com, as well as you can listen to more of my mind sharing on YouTube under the name Katerina Universal. And remember, life is to experience only.